Death is considered to be the ultimate equaliser. It's a terrifying concept for most people. Many would much prefer to be immortal and never have to deal with the fear of dying. Well, there are some figures throughout history who have claimed to be immortal themselves, including some people on our list who were considered immortal in their lifetime, and even after, despite having already died. As is the case with mysterious stories such as these, at some point real history and facts can be muddied with myth and legends, and it becomes hard to separate fact from fiction. Common sense would tell us that at some point each one of us will die. Instead of facing this dark reality, humans choose to believe instead in solutions that can grant them eternal life, such as these 6 mysterious people who claim to be immortal. Number 6. Merlin. When people hear the name Merlin, they imagine an elderly man with a pointed hat and a long white beard who served as magician at the court of King Arthur. The real question is whether or not Merlin is a real historical figure who actually lived. According to legend, his father was an incubus, a male demon that had sexual intercourse with his human mortal mother. The immortal Merlin has become an infamous part of folklore, appearing across many fairy tales, myths and films. The origins of this immortal warlock can be tracked back to Old England, and he is most commonly associated with King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table and the Lady of the Lake. Some people even now believe that Merlin is real and an immortal wizard who continues to protect the royal family to this day. As is the case with a lot of mythology, the man behind the myth of Merlin likely did exist. However, much like other so-called immortal people, he also likely died at some point. Number 5. Achilles. Most historians are in agreement that the person known as Achilles was a real person, and that his skills in battle and accomplishments were embellished by Homer. Modern scholars believe that the city of Troy was more than just some Shangri-La mythical city, but a real place where a real Trojan War took place. Archaeologists who have been digging into the myth Homer wrote believe that the War of Troy was a longer process rather than a singular event. Any figure whom Homer mentions in his poems are likely to have existed at some point in time. According to legend, Achilles was dipped into the river Styx when he was a baby by his mother in order to endow him with impenetrable skin that could withstand any weapon. This made Achilles practically invincible, in theory. He had one weakness, and that was the ankle that his mother held him in order to dip him into the river. The most commonly held belief regarding Achilles is that he was shot in his heel, and that this event is from where we get the terms Achilles tendon and Achilles heel, which are used to describe vulnerabilities. Number 4. Nicolas Flamel. Anyone who knows anything about magic and mystery has either heard or should check out the stories of Nicolas and Perenelle Flamel. Nicolas Flamel is even mentioned in the Harry Potter stories, where his creditors have been the creator of the Philosopher's Stone. In the story of Harry Potter, the stone is said to grant eternal youth and must be kept away from the evil Lord Voldemort. While the Harry Potter novels themselves are obviously fictional stories, the man known as Nicolas Flamel did indeed live in 15th century France. Flamel was a scribe and a scholar who dedicated his life to understanding the writings of a mysterious book filled with alchemical symbols said to hold the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone. There are a number of myths and legends surrounding Nicolas Flamel, including the claim that he managed to successfully create a Philosopher's Stone. Even though he died in 1417, the myth persisted, and his journey to create and control the Philosopher's Stone was perpetuated through his writings. While modern scholars are less willing to believe in the authenticity of his texts and the field of alchemy in general, FLAMEL remains a key figure of alchemic lore and history. Number 3. Count of Saint Germain. The Count of Saint Germain was said to be beautiful and enigmatic, with skin that never changed with the seasons. The Count would move from place to place throughout his life, taking with him his secrets and captivating people with his mysterious nature. The myths and legends surrounding Saint Germain started to become more widespread during the 19th and 20th centuries, and they still continue to this day. The myths around the man include the idea that he is immortal, an alchemist who created the elixir of life, the wandering Jew, and also that he predicted the French Revolution. Descriptions of the Count of Saint Germain paint him as an adventurer, a courtier, a charlatan, an alchemist, a pianist and a violinist, and an amateur composer. Despite all of this speculation, actual knowledge of his life and story remains a massive mystery that no one truly understands. The Count spent his life meeting dignitaries and leaders across the world before he settled in Eckernford, Germany in 1779. According to some official records, this is where he passed away, departing the mortal realm in 1784. Despite this, there are no tombstones in the town that bear his name. Around 200 years after the supposed death of the Count of Saint Germain, a French magician called Richard Chanfray came forward and claimed that he was the Count. But of course Chanfray was also to pass away eventually, so who knows what happened to the Count. Perhaps he still wanders the earth, or perhaps he really did die in a German town. Number 2. Heracles. The story of Heracles is one of the more famous myths known around the world. There's never been anyone who has attained such glory on a universal level across so many centuries. The stories and the labours of Heracles depict a strong and brave man who committed deeds so legendary and endured so many hardships that he eventually earned the power of an immortal, according to legend. Whether or not he was truly immortal, it's impossible to deny that the man achieved metaphorical immortality. The question of whether or not there was a man called Heracles who was the figure behind the myth is one that we don't have a definitive answer to. The only thing that can be said for certain is that, much like when the city of Troy was discovered, archaeologists sparked the curiosity of historians and the general public alike when they claimed there was sufficient evidence that a tomb discovered in the state of Peloponnese in 2010 could be the final resting place for the mythical figure. If there was a real man behind the myth of Heracles, he obviously never achieved real immortality. Even so, he became perhaps the most famous hero of ancient times and probably the most beloved one as well. There are many stories of Heracles more than any other mythical hero, and his name has been immortalised in time. Heracles will live on for as long as his stories do, and there's no sign these stories will stop being told anytime soon. Number 1. Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang was the founder of the legendary Qin dynasty, and is remembered as the man who gave a face to China and gave it an identity. Many people around the world are well aware of two of his most famous achievements: the construction of the Great Wall of China and the creation of the Terracotta Army. Qin Shi Huang is remembered for being one of the most important emperors in Chinese history, shaping the history and culture of the country. The people who surrounded him were greatly influenced by his accomplishments and began to believe that he was an immortal being. They were desperate to make it a reality. Legends say that Qin Shi Huang sent a servant out to find the secret to immortality in order to achieve eternal life. The servant, known as Yu Fudong, sailed eastwards with thousands of young men and women. However, Xu Fudong and his crew never returned to China, perhaps because they were afraid of the punishment waiting for them for failing in their mission. Other legends say that they founded and populated the island nation of Japan. Queen Shi Huang passed away in 210 BC at the age of 50. He fell victim to a lethal fast-acting disease. His final act was to prove to his law followers that he was just as mortal as every other human being.